Because look, terrorism, the point of it is to make people scared and angry and lash out at people, right? Like 9/11 made the Americans lash out at Iraq, which in hindsight doesn't make any sense because Iraq had nothing to do with it. But the Americans lashed out at Iraq and put themselves into a massive occupation that cost them a lot of money. So the way to respond to terrorism is to not lash out and to carefully and calmly consider how you might improve your society. I mean, the cycle of violence that we saw in Iraq, like the sectarian violence between the Shia and Sunni, it was exactly that. Like, you know, one group of people get bombed, they bomb them back in return, and then they bomb them back in return, and it just becomes this cycle of revenge, of bombings. And so for terrorism to become, like, to trigger violence that rolls out of control would require us to somehow shoot a bunch of white guys in return, which I don't think we're gonna do. Like, the revenge attacks is what allows the violence to spiral out of control. To strike back in revenge, which, you know, unfortunately for the Americans, is what they chose to do after 9/11. Q says, yeah, but one's reactions to things is driven in part by education and your society, and because of the globalization of ideas, the youth could be being radicalized, and you, the country, wouldn't notice that until it's too late. Well, okay, well, we'll see. We'll see, Q. We'll see. But again, going back to Wizzy says this works out too good. What do you mean this works out too good? Oh, you're reaching the tunnel? Going back to the Treaty of Waitangi, Q. I mean, on the other side of that is that the Maori tribes, the indigenous people, have gotten used to the idea that if they have been discriminated against and deprived of their property, they could go to court and get justice through the courts, right? Because that, like the Waitangi Tribunal, because that has been relatively successful in resolving past disputes, we are not used to the idea that disputes requires us to take matters into our own hands to shoot people. Unlike if you were in a society where injustices happen all the time, and no matter how much you protest and try to speak up, nothing gets done, then people resort to violence because, you know, nothing else works. But here, because we have a history of, you know, peaceful methods working, we are less inclined to jump to violence. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Which, I mean, also is similar to the European and the EU, right? You know, the purpose of the European Union is to prevent future European wars by, you know, instead of having people fight their way through their disagreements, there would be, you know, an entity that organized things. You know, they can argue in the European Parliament instead of going to war. That was the idea of the EU. Q says, I think it's closer to the truth, not that New Zealand is doing something right, is that the US is doing something very wrong. That is entirely correct, Q. Right and wrong is, in a way, relative. Like, the US have done things so incredibly wrong. Oh, hey, Wesley. Yeah, no, like, New Zealand is not exceptionally right. We're just reasonable. Alright, so we're moving out of the tunnel. How are you doing, Wesley? I'm gonna go back and put in trapdoors and put in the resets. Which, okay, there's a trapdoor there but no reset. There's a trapdoor there but no reset. What should I do? Trapdoors and resets at the same time? Alright. No, trapdoors first and then resets. I need ladders, crap. Slabs, ladders. Trapdoors. I don't think Cody understood what I was trying to say. I'm really not a patriot. I am remarkably unpatriotic. Like, I'm not just defending things because it's, I don't know, it's my team or whatever it is. Switch track. And there. Oh wait, no, one block down. What's going on, Wesley? There, and then here. And then switch track there. Oh wait, no, I need also know in hindsight this is better, you think? Having everything under the track is quite neat. It is neat, but I don't... I didn't want it to be too tidy though. That's the thing. I want it to be a little bit punky, if that makes sense. So like I want the guts of this thing to be visible. Will be also, yeah, a lot more dirt punching too. It is. You're right that we can make it a lot tidier if we put everything under the track. That's the wrong. Up here. Wesley says, I think I'm gonna leave it at that for tonight. Oh, are you alright? You said you were sore before. Let me... Still a lot to do tomorrow, alright. Make sure you're okay, Wesley. I will continue wiring. Alright, good. Take care. And we have to keep in mind... Yeah, see you next week, Wesley. And we have to keep in mind that like the goal of terrorism is to make people scared. I've said this already. To make people scared so they do things that are irrational and bad out of fear and panic. And so you kind of can't respond with fear and panic, otherwise you would literally do what the terrorists want you to do. I mean, not that I'm inclined to react with fear and panic to anything. Or like if you blow things out of proportion. I guess I put that there. Or make the threat seem bigger than it really is. That goes there. goes there. And then, wait, does that line up? Does that really line up? That lines up. That's amazing. And I don't really wanna white supremacy. Maybe I shouldn't go and do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, but maybe I already have. I mean, what actually is white supremacy? And whether it's about just murdering a few dozen people. Is that the wrong side? No, that's the right side. I'm just doing the forward rather than back. Okay. That way. That way. Alright, back to wiring. You know what? I'm not gonna talk about it. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Six, 7, this is 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 3, 4, and 5. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Repeater, piston, repeater, signal. Are you... Q? You're probably not. I was gonna say... Have you ever considered if you had to oppress a group of people? Have you considered how you would go about doing it? You're probably not that kind of person. So maybe that's a stupid question. Probably not a good question to ask people. If you had to be a racist tyrant, have you considered how you're gonna... No, yeah, no, I knew it. I knew you haven't. You're a good person, Q. Better person than some. Yeah, no, it's not good to ask people. Anyway. If you were a tyrannical dictator, how would you secure your power base and extract resources from your oppressed subjects? But I mean, if you can read your history books, you don't really have to figure it out yourself. You can just read your history books and look at the descriptions of oppressive societies. Or just like look at North Korea or wherever it is. Like how does Kim Jong-un and his predecessors, how did they stay in power? Six, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 1, 2, 3, 14, 15. Repeater, piston, repeater, signal.